All right. Sage, thank you so much for joining me today. I know we've talked about this for a couple weeks, and I'm excited to kind of dig in and share more about the Find HR product with kind of our network and a whole bunch of people that I know have shown a lot of interest in it. So I thought what we could do is I would give kind of a brief explanation of the organization, a little bit about my background, and then I'd love to kick it over to you and have you introduce yourself and really kind of talk through why we felt like making this a core part of what Find does and innovating in a space where there's a lot of different options in the HRIS HCM world, but not necessarily something like what Find has done is really important and kind of where that came from, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So my name is Josh Vesley. I've spent the last 18, almost 19 years in the human capital industry, mostly in the staffing world. I worked for 17 and a half years with the world's largest staffing organization, Randstad. And in that time, I had the chance to really experience a lot of different innovative technologies. We had our own internal innovation fund where we went out and seeded a bunch of HR tech startups, mostly focused on automation and intelligence that would help the end services that we were providing to customers and the candidate experience. And then I left there and I spent a little time in an organization that was mainly just focused on healthcare and the complexities that were involved in servicing those industries that had a high degree of regulatory oversight, compliance, and challenges when it came to really organizing all of the different data and technologies that went along with providing those services. And while I was at that organization, I actually had the chance to meet Find, and they came in and solved for complexities in scheduling and timekeeping and cost allocation in just a totally different way than I had ever seen before with a mobile first approach, and had the experience to really get to know the founders, Tom and Ryan, and just see how different a technology that's built on modern architecture could be. And then I left that organization and went to a small startup in the AI space and really enjoyed my time because I'd only worked for really large publicly traded companies. And so I got to see how things can be very different when you're working in an agile environment and focused on a product in technology that is incorporating AI, which I know we're going to talk a little bit about today, which is changing at light speed as we kind of see the world around us changing. And so my goal for today is with this 9-year-old organization of Find and where we've been focused on building products and servicing frontline workforces, deskless employees, to really ensure that we create this frictionless environment for everything when it comes to hiring to managing the day-to-day operational and execution layers of an organization, is that we can really start to think about how that very first touch point with an organization when an applicant comes in and goes through the hiring process can be very different and much more meaningful to the organization and what they want to accomplish, and easier to get through those processes and providing more insight and value to the actual candidate and employee. So that was a bit of a ramble. I apologize, and I'm looking forward to digging in. Before we start to actually show the dashboards and technology to the folks watching, Sage, why don't you go ahead and give an introduction and talk a little bit about how you got involved in the HR side of this product.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, my name is Sage Loveland, and I've been with Find for around 2 years full-time. I've worked part-time before that, so quite a long time. And I was initially involved in, our time and attendance tracking, all of that. And when I came on, that was really the beginning of our HRES journey. And so I've been there since the beginning, really building it from the ground up. And at Find, we are very, very focused on our clients and their needs and solving their problems. So as we were working with clients and hearing their problems, we were really able to build a solution that is very built out for our clients and the problems that are coming in firsthand that especially employees are encountering with modern technology. So really, really excited to get into this. It's a very, very exciting time in technology in general with AI. So I'm excited to go through it.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And Sage, one other thing that I just want to call out that I missed on the background of the company is, we're based in Utah. We've got a team that's spread out all over the world, and primarily our customers are in North America and the US and Canada. And just as you're walking through the product, there's a lot of different requirements that organizations need to adhere to, whether it's a country or a regulatory requirement or even an organizational requirement. And so the fact that we have customers across the US, across the different provinces of Canada, I just wanted to make sure that we called that out. We are eventually going to be looking at global rollouts, but right now we're primarily focused in the North American region in those areas. So with that, I figured, because it just makes the most sense from a chronological order perspective, why don't we start with the applicant experience and really how we have reimagined what the ATS could look like. And I'll let you take it from there. I'll start to share the screen where we've got that job posting pulled up.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. So what you guys are seeing right here is an example of what an employee would see for their job post. And there's a few things to call out here, and these will be common themes as we go through. But for the employee, we have a few rules that we want to make sure we follow at all times. One, we will never make the employee download an app. So you're seeing this in my browser, but this could also be viewed on the employee's iPhone, a tablet, a computer like you're seeing here, and the same information would be accessed. Secondly, translations are a huge thing for us. So anything that's facing the employee, we want to be able to translate into their native language, and the employee would be able to select that, like Josh said, right from the jump on this ATS page. So, the ATS is fairly simple in terms of the job post, but when we get to the creation of it, this is the admin side. The admin has full flexibility to put whatever they'd like in that job post. All this text you're seeing here, fully configurable. And then for each job post, it can be very open-ended to where, hey, I just want somebody to apply, and then I will assign them out to where we need them, all the way down to, okay, I need a very specific person with this set of skill sets at this specific job. And our end goal is to cut down on any administrative tasks. So you can actually assign, hey, I want the employees that apply here to flow in with X occupation, and we want them to flow into, the job you're trying to hire for.
So Sage, let's just take a pause there for a second. So a couple of things you mentioned. It is available and can work on really any iOS or Android device from a mobile perspective. But ultimately, it's a mobile web experience with a URL that can be accessed from any device that can connect to the internet. And once you're on here, you can essentially translate it into whatever language. I can't even remember how many hundreds of languages we have in there from a native language speaking perspective, and see that in their first language if they speak multiple.
Yep, absolutely. And just to show that, I do have my phone here. I have the QR code that's created with every job post that is made, and then you can see that same page is pulled up on my mobile device.
Wow.
So with the ability to have that QR code, it can be in the office for walk-ins, it can be on the side of a van, wherever you're wanting to broadcast this job post out, you can do that with the QR code.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then additionally, of course, we integrate with all the common job boards, Indeed, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, all those where you could actually push these job posts that you create on Find out to those sites where the employee would then be able to apply, and your prospects or applicants would flow back into Find.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one other piece on that, because a lot of frontline workforces seem to get a lot of referrals in their hiring pipeline. And so, You can share, like you said, that QR code. You could also just share the link for the mobile web address for somebody to just go click on and or connect that in a link to their a text message or an email that they send to a friend or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even if you have, a set of supervisors, they could have their own job posting, and then you could report on all the applicants that are flowing in under them. So there's a lot of flexibility with how candidates flow in and the number of different job posts that you can create.
That's awesome. Cool.
Awesome.
All right. How do we apply?
Yeah, so getting back to the employee side, again, touched on that language translation, really important. We get that from the start. And then one of the pain points that we were forced to solve that, a lot of other companies still have a hard time with is email. So we found a lot of the frontline workers don't have an email, or the email is not reliable. And that's a lot of times the only way for an employee to apply is to have a valid email. So we've actually removed that requirement completely. And now an employee to apply to find, all they need is a first, last name, and mobile phone number. And as we get into this, we will talk more and more about mobile phone number and how important that is and how critical that is to contacting an employee.
So just so I'm hearing you correctly, I know you're going to fill in your information here, but no app, no username and password, no email required.
Correct. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's very different than the traditional ATS systems that are out in the marketplace today.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was one of the main things that we were looking to solve was the ability for an employee to get in as frictionless as possible. So from there, when an employee applies, we will start this onboarding process or this applicant process off. And the way we kick that off is through text-based notifications and information. And we'll dive deep into that, but texting is really the backbone of everything we do here at Find in terms of notifying the employee. We found that, something like 95% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. And so with that information, the best way to get a hold of these frontline workers or to show information to them is by texting them. So with that said, when an employee actually applies, they would be sent a text message with whatever the company would like to say to them, saying, hey, thanks for applying. Click this link to get more information. And I'll show that on my end. So for a text, we can pull in the employee's name, whatever your company wants to say for that initial outreach, and then we will guide them to the ESS platform. But before we get there, I also want to introduce the idea of Didi. Didi is our AI assistant or chatbot that is intertwined into everything Find related. So the employee can actually text, if they have a question, they can text right in this thread, and Didi will have the ability to respond in different ways. And we'll go into that a little bit later.
Yeah, no, so that's amazing, just to kind of touch on the fact that the world is quickly moving to an agentic supported model in almost every task associated type of workflow that's out there. But before we dive deeper into that, because I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit in more detail, when you clicked on apply, this isn't the text message that came from that, right?
Yes.
Instantaneously, you're getting that text message.
Yep.
Wow. Because I know a lot of times when you're applying for a traditional position, it might take a day, 2, maybe even a week for an organization to respond back with something that's actionable for an employee. And so what you're saying is we're actually pushing that directly to their phone in real time, where they're going to be able to start doing more for the application process.
Yeah, and that's our whole goal, is to get the employee to do as much as they can on their own without the need for any hand-holding or, assistant from your guys' organization. Find can automate all of that and get them going.
Cool. All right, show me more.
Awesome. So once they get this text, they will be able to log into what we call the ESS portal. And I've already logged in, and you can see it's as simple as that to get me into the ESS portal. But for first-time employees, for security, we do a passwordless login, which is really critical for our frontline workers. Again, keep in mind, we're trying to make it as simple as possible for them. So they will log in with their phone number. And let me just log out here. They can log in with their phone number, and I'll enter that in. And then when they click next, what will happen is a token will be sent to their device. They can enter that token, and a token is just a security key. It's very common in software where a token will be sent. That's just to verify they own the phone number. Enter that token, set up security questions. And this is just for the first time they log in, so that when they do log in again, they're on a different device, they can answer those questions and log in, again, all without a password.
Amazing. Awesome.
Awesome. So let me go ahead and log in here quickly. All right. So I want to also talk about the pipeline here. We haven't introduced the idea of pipelines quite yet, but this is what a pipeline is in Fine's definition. So a pipeline is just a Kanban board, and it can be very flexible to what your company needs. So like you saw in those job posts, an employee can come into a pipeline based on what job they apply for. So this application process may have a set step of requirements. A salaried application or job may have a totally different application process. And so with the idea of pipelines, we can actually customize that to whatever the job requires.
Awesome. So right now we're looking at this pipeline for applicants. So this is pre-selection or onboarding, and these steps or sections in the Kanban board can be customized to have 2 steps, 3 steps, 1 step, whatever the organization has in their process today.
Yep, absolutely. And then within the pipeline, we can do a number of different actions. Like you saw one, we can send out a text message introducing them to your company, to ESS, prompting them to apply. And we can also assign what we refer to as a badge. And a badge is like what it sounds. It's a collection of different items that make up that badge. So you can see here for demo ABC company, for application to be complete, we need the employee's phone number, the address, primary language, and then for the application file to be completed. And that is fully customizable to whatever the workflow of the company might be.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier with Didi, but what happens if maybe an applicant comes in and let's just say 4 or 5 days from now, they haven't taken that next step, or in whatever time frame that the organization wants to maintain momentum for those actions to be completed?
Yeah, that's where it gets really exciting. We can actually leverage the badge, and we know exactly where they're at in the process. And so do you. So you as an admin can see exactly where they're at. You can hover, you can see their progress, but AI is also aware of that. So we can put in different policies and say, hey, if the employees who are applying haven't made any progress in 2 days, send a reminder text out to them. And we can build in different drip campaigns to try and get as many applicants to finish the application as possible, as well as just during the normal onboarding process. If someone's stuck and hasn't completed section 1 of the I-9, we can push them to complete that using the same text thread that you saw earlier.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That's great.
And one other important thing I wanted to call out is, yes, while we do send out system messages, we can have the drip campaigns to remind employees of certain things. You as an admin can also send a text message to the employee. So if you see this employee hasn't made any progress, or you want to have a conversation with the employee, you can text them right in here and have a conversation with them, and they'll receive that message from you, again, all in that same thread. So that's something that's really important. We want to keep everything in the same thread, and then they'll be able to respond back to you, and you'll be able to see that message there as well.
Wow. That's awesome.
Okay, awesome. So going back to the badging, for the employee, they would see this application badge. And again, there's a list of steps that they need to complete. So, home address, mobile, primary language, and the entering of information is fairly simple. Again, we'd keep this in the employee's native language, try and keep it as simple as possible, address pop-ups, different things like that to select their information. And then they would complete their application, all of that great stuff. And I want to switch gears slightly to focus on the onboarding and document gathering. So over here, we have the onboarding pipeline. And Find has a very specific way of gathering information for documents. And again, this would be the same for application, whatever documents you guys have, we would gather this information in what we call a data-driven like format. So if I come back over here, I actually have a different badge up now. I've moved to employee onboarding information, and I want to focus on this badge packet that we have. So these forms are a set of policies and procedures, very common in onboarding. Usually there's a bunch that the employee has to sign. So in Find, we'll present the form, then they can go ahead and sign, submit, and that file's complete. We'll automatically take them to the next file. Again, if there's no information needed by the employee, they can just review it, click sign, and
Sage,
sign
how does
directly.
the form know that it's you? Like, how does it know what name it's assigning on that form?
Yeah, so we actually break out the forms into collect personal data and apply it to every form. So like you saw in the application, once we have name, once we have phone number, email, all that standard information, we're actually going to autofill that to every single form going forward. And a
Wow.
really great example of that is actually our I-9 process, because like everyone knows, the I-9 calls for a number of different personal details. It's very repetitive. But there is still the need for the employee to fill in data. So this is what we call our data-driven form. The employee would press get started, and we're not going to start with asking their name again. We're going to start with information we don't have. So their middle initial is one thing. Any other last names used, that comes directly from the I-9 form. Citizenship information. So if they select a citizen, for example, and click next, it'll bring them to the preparer translator. But we actually have a stepper so that if they select something different, it'll bring them to a different set of options. So this can be done with any form. And we want to reduce the number of errors on the employee's end, the number of errors on the admin's end, and make it as easy as possible for the employee where, maybe they would be filling in something and now it's just a drop down where they can select it.
Yeah. So again, just thinking about, traditional types of roles that we might, recruit for. If somebody is requiring a CDL license, they might have kind of a separate decision tree and step down that they're going through versus if they're just going to be driving a traditional vehicle and using a regular driver's license or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to say I did not use a preparer translator. Click finish. And this is where all the filling happens. So you can see not only does my personal information that I filled out previously get populated, the selection that I made just then, a citizen, and today's date will autofill to the form as well. So we can do that with any form that calls for the existing information and then build that custom data-driven form for any, additional form. If you want the employee's favorite ice cream, we can capture that in the easiest way possible. And historically, this is usually done with paper. And even if it's online, there's a lot of pinching and zooming with the PDF to have to fill in the information and type. And it's really not a good user experience. So that's why we've decided to break it out, decouple it from the form itself, but still populate it back to the form for that visual. And then they can review that before they sign.
That's awesome.
And again, our signatures are done with your finger or with a mouse, and we do populate that signature onto the form. So if I and the employee wanted to go view that form again, you can click on it, And you can see my signatures now populated there.
Wow.
So from an admin perspective, if I come back over to this pipeline, and this is our onboarding pipeline, so really great visual to see exactly where my employees are and their progress, what steps they're at. I can hover and see, okay, looks like the employees completed something on the I-9. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this is where the admin side comes in. So not only do we decouple the information from the PDF for the employee, we do the same thing for the admin. So for section 2, they can enter their information, select list A, B, and C, comes directly from the I-9, click next, does that same kind of stepper-like format. So if they select B and C, it'll take them to B and C. I'm going to go ahead and select A. Document type, again, for simplicity's sake, it's way easier for you just to select than to type it out every single time. We'll just put USA here, put in a document number. Expiration date is also really important. We do track expiration dates. So if you have a non-US citizen, you can receive a report of, hey, this employee's document is going to expire in 6 months. And then if you want to receive that with 1 month left and then down to the wire, 7 days left, we can report on all of that.
And those notifications can also get pushed to the employee to remind them to update their information as well, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Wow.
And then, simple errors like not allowing an expiration date in the past, we allow that. No. Click next. I'm going to go ahead and save. And then the employer would be able to sign as well on their end. And from there, the I-9's done. And the employer can come in, take a look, see all the information that they added, their signature, their name, the business's information. Again, since we already have that information, we don't ask for it every time. And this document's done. And the nice thing about our document manager is that you can come download this document at any time. So you can print it, send it out, have access to it. But you can also always upload a paper form or a different form of the I-9. Yes, it's great to fill it out with Find, do all of that, but we always will allow different versions of the file to be managed here if you have a paper version or something else like that.
Got it. And it will always keep the record of the previous version if there was maybe 2 different versions that were uploaded?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even more in-depth, you can do notes, name the version, add comments on the specific version type to make sure you're staying very organized with how you're managing your documents.
Especially if you have to go back and do any sort of an audit, you have that complete historical record and audit log to go refer back to. I think this is a really important time for us to just highlight the fact that Find is a software organization. We believe that, we're building tools that enable our customers to enact the process that they feel is going to be the best for their employees and for their organization. But we don't make any recommendations on exactly how to configure the system. And we always recommend that you do consult with either an in-house HR professional or an HR consultant to just make sure that everything is meeting the requirements of the industry that you're in, the state that you do business in, the province that you operate in, to just ensure that, again, the compliance of the technology itself is up to date and as robust as possible.
Yep, agreed. Great call out. So coming back to the pipeline, once this employee is done with all the required information, you as the admin have the option to just simply drag and drop them into the next set of tasks. So by dragging and dropping them here, again, we can send out another text to the employee. We can assign a new set of information, documents, whatever the employee needs there. And they would get a text reminding them, sending them to the link, kind of reinforcing that behavior of, hey, this is where you go to do your onboarding and all of that great information. So that you can see that badge populated there. With our tax withholding information, I just quickly want to touch on that. We have a really great partner called Symmetry, who we partner with for our tax forms. And with that, that allows us to dynamically assign tax forms based on the employee's address and a number of different requirements based on the region, the school district. There's so many different options there. And we will dynamically assign the correct tax form. So there's no need for an admin to review the information and decide what forms this employee would have. We handle that automatically.
Yeah, and I also want to make a note here, since you were referencing our partner on the tax side. Other partners that we work with can perform work opportunity tax credit assessment and processing, opportunity zone tax credits, credentialing verification. So whether you have partners in these spaces or you're looking for Find to bring our partner network to the table, we can incorporate all of those processes, especially when it comes to frontline workers and anything that requires a credential, to become a part of this process with that document digitization that Sage showed, as we want to make it as seamless and frictionless as possible without having to send employees to this system over here for credentials and maybe this system over here for their tax opportunity credit paperwork. We can ingest all that information and ensure that it's a seamless experience end to end.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to call out one really important partner is we do have an integration with E-Verify. And with that integration, that allows us to automatically create a case for the employee once we have the I-9, and we will actually sync down the status of that case. So if we create a case, the employee comes out as verified, we'll pull that status back down to Find. And so you can actually see real time what the employee's E-Verify status is in Find.
It's awesome.
Okay, awesome. So once they would finish there, we can move them again to whatever other stage is next. In this case is training. And we do have a full LMS system. So whether it's videos that are required to be watched, whether it's tests that you want the employee to take, we can configure that. If it's just documents that you want them to review and see, we can do that as well. So that would all be handled here and managed with the badging system. And you can track, okay, the employees completed the test with X score, we require 80%, they need to take it again, or whether it's a YouTube video they are needing to watch, you would be able to manage that here.
Yeah. Now, sticking on that same thread and thinking about pipelines, because we've really kind of talked about pipelines from application and onboarding, but pipelines can be designed for anything. So maybe just talk a little bit more about how pipelines can be used for existing employees, whether they're going through upskilling, training, development, or any sort of a process that you want to be able to manage and track digitally as well.
Yeah, great call out. So the pipeline you're seeing here might look very built out, but really it's very, very configurable down to the color of the text, to the color of the stage, to what status substatus is in there, even the name. That's all stuff that our team can create and you can create on your end as well for whatever workflow might be needed. A few common ones are offboarding. So if you're going to terminate an employee, you maybe want to offboard them. We have different E-Verify workflows with TNC pending. I mentioned earlier kind of the I-9 process with the document managing. You can imagine you have a pipeline that its sole purpose is for those expiring documents. One stage would be 6 months out, one stage would be 3 months out, the others would be a week out. And that gives you a really great visual to see, okay, I have 5 employees that are 6 months out, and then of course the responding rest of the employees.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. One other thing that I wanted to mention, because some of the organizations we work with are, thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. And so I'm just picturing in my head, if I'm somebody looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to see, 500 people on these Kanban boards in all different stages? Like, how can I filter, segment out the groups that I want to look at?
Yes. So We have a hierarchy here that you can filter by. So I've been doing everything at the account level, which is the top of the pyramid. Everything falls below this level. But your organization can be split into a number of different regions or cities or state, however your organization is split up. And that would allow you to filter the view by that region or state as well. So you can keep it high level if you want to see, hey, I want to see everyone at the South region, for example. You can see I'm the only employee that's under South. Again, I can go back up to the account level, but this allows for different roles to be able to see exactly what they need to see. The site manager or the division manager for the South doesn't need to see the North. They only need to see the South. We can restrict their view to only see employees that are onboarding in the South. And then you can really drill down very deep to the job level. So the South includes all those jobs under it. But if I want to see, okay, I only want to see this job, for example, you'd be able to create that filter and see that. And we have filters that you can create, but then we also have very extensive permissions so that a supervisor that has access to HR would only be able to see employees at their job and not employees at the entire organizational level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just critical in terms of being able to manage at scale, both the role-based access control of what people can see and how they can interact with the information, but also just being able to manage the process across a larger organization. And the other thing I'll just add in there, because we've mentioned it a few times, but I can't emphasize enough how much the automation from just keeping your data clean can help out. And so if you have hundreds of applicants that are sitting in that first stage and they just haven't progressed, and you've reached out a few times, you can automate that profile going into an inactive stage. And so that individual then drops out of that pipeline. You don't lose the detail that you've already captured from them. So if you want to start to reach out to them, and we'll talk here in a second about how you can run campaigns to really any individual that has come into the platform. But keeping your data clean, and we hear this a lot from organizations that manage most of the process on paper, is very difficult because yes, you can go file that away, but at the same time, if you've spent the time to enter the information in, you tend to just hold on to that, process or data maybe a little bit longer in areas that you shouldn't. And this really just helps you stick to a very structured, strategic process that will enable the organization to know really where they're at with the needs that they have, and ensure that the data that they're looking at is accurate.
Right, exactly right. And we usually like to take those processes that you're currently doing. Maybe it's, hey, after 5 days, if the applicant hasn't responded, remove their profile. Maybe that's done by a human right now. That can easily be automated into Find for us to automatically remove that profile based on your guys' policy.
So Sage, let's say you're in onboarding and you've moved into this training section. So you're now probably an employee getting paid during that training time period and starting to learn the ropes of the organization. Let's say as a CEO, I want to just reach out to everybody that's in training and give them a personalized message from myself to just say, hey, so glad you're here. Would love to get feedback from you as you're going through the training, and have that really be deployed at scale. How can we help organizations reach and engage with their employees more actively and seamlessly?
Absolutely. So this is what we call Find Mobilize, which is our messaging center. And for that exact CEO scenario, they would be able to come in and create a campaign. And if it's everyone at the company, pretty simple. You would select the entire hierarchy level like we discussed. Things can be filtered down based on hierarchy, starting at the account level. And then, you can schedule it. If you wanted a message to go out on Christmas Eve, you can schedule that 6 months in advance. Title the campaign, of course, write your message. And then we also allow Didi to personalize the message. And this is where the AI aspect comes in. If you just want to send out a message that's structured, totally fine, you can do that. But if you want it to be a bit more personalized per employee with the data that we have, you can toggle this on and write in a Didi AI prompt. Say, hey, be very personable, or, talk like the person would in their native state, since we have their address. There's a number of different things you can utilize with that, and kind of prompt it. And
Yeah.
then
Do it in
additionally,
the voice of Santa Claus and
right,
make sure
right.
everybody is celebrating with their family or whatever the case might
Yes.
be. And as I think more and more individuals are getting comfortable with the, kind of commercialization of AI, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever model you're typically using, I think more and more people are understanding that, the AI capabilities are really powerful from a personalization standpoint, but they can also be trained. And, with Find, as an organization is kind of ingesting things like their employee handbook or their cultural mission and different pieces of information, that AI will take all of that into consideration to really ensure that the messaging that is created off the prompts is aligned with that other detail within the organization as well. And maybe you can just talk a little bit about how we think about that knowledge base and just the continuous learning that takes place for an organization that's adopting this kind of agentic AI strategy.
Yeah, so we think of Didi as a whole. Didi's Finds AI. We've enhanced it with specific prompts and the information we want it to know. But once it gets to a specific company, your guys's workforce and your policies, it becomes a different persona, because it will take in all of that information. Maybe it's on the East Coast and it's a little bit more brash. It fits the persona of the company as a whole, as well as all your policies, the things you guys care about. We can add in your guys's company website, so it has access to all that information into what we call the data lake to feed the personality of Didi per company. And then everything it does will be based off of that data lake, that knowledge that it has.
That's amazing. Now, let's just say this isn't me personally, but let's just say I don't like getting text messages on Thursdays for whatever reason. My son Vince and we go to the virtual golf, place on Thursdays after work, and I just don't want to get any text messages from work after 5 p.m. on a Thursday. Can I do anything to kind of personalize my experience as an employee?
Definitely. So Didi has a persona for
How
you
did
guys.
you know I was going to say that?
I know. I don't know. So Didi has a persona for your company as a whole, but then the individual employee can also further personalize Didi to what they want and their needs. So, like you're seeing here, Didi would text the employee, and then the employee can text back, and Didi will take in that information, understand it, and say, okay, I'm not going to send messages out on Thursdays to this employee anymore. So that's all stuff we can definitely do and continue to personalize it. If the employee said, hey, you're too robotic, be more casual, this is too professional, whatever that might be, Didi will take that and adjust for that specific employee, not as a whole.
What if they text a question that Didi doesn't have an answer for? There's this whole idea of like hallucination. Like, we don't want Didi to just make stuff up. So how do we ensure that if the employee needs to know something, that's not lost in, a message that's just sitting out there and not getting responded to?
Yes, for sure. So Didi will be able to answer a majority of questions, because the questions it gets asked will probably be fairly common. How much PTO do I get in a year? What's your guys' PTO policy? It can answer that. Anything it can't answer, it will have an escalation path according to the org charts and the processes we put in place to escalate that question to the right person. Maybe this question's simple enough. Okay, I'm just going to escalate it to the supervisor. or maybe this is a sensitive question. HR needs to be aware of that. It will escalate that up. And this brings in the idea of a pending action inbox. So in Find, I'm logged in as my user. I'm going to have a specific inbox that's catered to my user and say, okay, Zachary has an issue. It's been categorized as pending action, meaning I need to do something. Let me take a look and I'll respond. And all the other messages will come into the regular inbox. So, if they just said thanks, great, whatever that might be, there's no action needed there. So there's really no need for a human to take a look and respond. They can, but we have that separation.
Yeah. This also, I think, just brings into, I think, a real clear view that if organizations are using Didi to communicate and escalate questions, challenges, concerns, and for whatever reason, if that goes to a legal action in the future, you have a running log of exactly what was said, who was said by, and it's also not on individuals' personal devices from the employer perspective. It's on the Find data lake and platform. So to be able to turn all that over and be able to really address those questions, super easy, and I think really protects an organization from how they manage anything that could be sensitive that is escalated.
Yep, absolutely. So not only will a human have access to this, Didi and the AI will also have access to the full conversation history, and we'll be able to have context when responding to messages. It won't come in without any knowledge. It'll have the full conversation history where it can see, okay, this employee actually already had a conversation with the supervisor. I don't need to bring that up again. So it has full context there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Sage, there's one more thing that I want to talk about, but anything else that you think would be super meaningful for those that are seeing this for the first time?
Yeah, just on the topic of routing, obviously we have the normal inbox, doesn't have to be within a campaign, but we also have campaign-based routing. So if that CEO was to send out, say, a PSA about, the clothing being worn, if anybody has a question from that specific campaign, we'll route it here to a campaign-based inbox where we can sort and say, okay, this question was specifically for this campaign, but then they can continue to have normal conversations. So that keeps the continuity of one thread while also sorting it to the correct people and the campaign that it belongs to.
Yeah, and super critical, right? If everything's on one thread, it's like, how do I know which response is going where? And so based on the responses that are being taken in and the messages that prompted that response is kind of how the sorting or escalation would work. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
And then just one last thing. So with AI, we can also capture data through text. So yes, think of the application process. The employee gets into ESS, fills in their information. An alternate is Didi through text gathers the information that it needs through text. So, if you're curious about the employee, when the next start date available for the employee is, Didi would be able to text that. The employee would be able to text their date in the same thread, and then we would store that as data. So we would take that start date, store it, so then whatever you want to do with that start date, use it, get application information, we can do that all through text.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for just this incredible overview of the platform. I think there's been a number of things that we've talked about that have been huge differentiators from anything that I've really seen in the market. Right, starting with the application process, the no app username, just first name, last name, phone number, the native language translation, the Kanban board, the automation of the reminders and updates, the use of badges. the customized workflows for really any process that an organization wants to have, the digitization of documents. Now I feel like I'm rambling again, so I'll cut myself off, but lots of different things. The last thing that I want to end on, and what I think organizations haven't really cracked the nut on in terms of a big problem that's out there, and I can name a number of different industries that struggle with this, is the idea of building flexibility into their workforce and thinking about how they can retain or bring people back to the organization after they've left. So if we can, just for a quick second, and we'll touch on a few of the things that we've already shown, but if we can go to the pipeline, and I think we have something built for offboarding, if I'm not mistaken. So we don't have anything built out here, and that's fine. But just I want individuals to imagine if there's any sort of an offboarding process where maybe you're doing an exit interview, or somebody has turned into their 2-week notice for resignation, and this individual, for whatever reason, maybe they need to leave because they're going to take care of a sick family member, or seasonally they go work somewhere else. But how would you maintain a relationship with that person to try to bring them back? Or if they're just no longer available 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, or whatever their schedule is, and maybe they're only available 2 days a week, get them to think about how they can still remain an employee, but just in a different capacity. So as we're thinking about this offboarding, and yet how we can maybe reimagine retention, utilizing the pipelines and maybe Mobilize, maybe just walk me through kind of the way that easily can be set up for an organization to execute on.
Yeah. So if you are going to terminate an employee, whether that be voluntary, involuntary, seasonal, left for school, if that's a reason where you'd want them to eventually come back, they've been a great employee, we have these reason codes that you can select, and that can be a very large list. We'd load those in there. You can add notes, allow rehire for an auditing perspective. But depending on the reason that you select, say it's seasonal, we'll actually store that employee at a specific status, substatus. So that could be terminated, rehire eligible, or terminated, seasonal. And with that being stored there, you would then be able to do specific things based on that status, including sending out messages. So like we just showed with Mobilize, if I wanted to send out a campaign to all my employees that are stored at terminated seasonal to try and get them to come back and pick up a shift or apply again, you can do that. And then with the badging, you can also know how eligible they are to work. You'd be able to come in and see, okay, maybe this job site requires that they're forklift certified. I can also filter to say, okay, I want all employees who have the forklift badge and are seasonal workers, and whatever other constraint you want to do there.
Yeah. So again, just a couple of examples that I know we've talked to different organizations about, but in construction, I do a really big project, and I'm building a new data center in New Mexico. And that project completes, and it's a year later, and I'm now awarded another really large project in the same area. I haven't built there in probably 6 or 7 months was when I last completed the last part of that last project. Everybody that worked on that project for me as a subcontractor, independent contractor, full-time employee that ended once the project ended, I already have all their records, credentials, information. I can simply reach out to all of them again and say, hey, we're starting a new project. Love to have you back on board. Here's the roles we're looking for. And then they can easily just come back in and reactivate their profile based on everything that we've already done together.
Exactly. And then maybe anything that has depreciated, like a certificate that's expired, we would know that since we have that expiration date, and say, okay, this employee's 99% good to go. They have one credential that is expired that they need to shore up before they're eligible for this job.
That's awesome. Sage, this was, again, very comprehensive, amazing walkthrough. I can't say thank you enough for being such an awesome partner here at Find, and really just think you've built an incredible product that is going to make a big difference in the world of work. So thank you, and thanks for participating on the live stream today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Josh.
Okay. Check us out more at find.ai if you want to learn more. And we're always happy to spend some one-on-one time with anybody that's interested in learning about the organization and what we can do to help. All right. Bye now.